Good evening, Molo Sanbonani. Hello, how's it? Welcome to this, another episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Here, of course, is your host, moi, Usihle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. Tonight's show, of course, is pre-recorded, so for as much as I know you guys love the interactive nature of the show, I will keep an eye on your comments. I'm also likely watching tonight's show. So welcome to it. Good evening. As always, guys, whether this is pre-recorded or not, you know what to do. Hit, of course, that like button, whether you're watching this simulcast on Twitter, Facebook, or on YouTube. And of course, make sure you share the stream too. Tonight, as promised, over, 2 or 3 weeks ago? Apologies for that also. We're going to have a bit of a meet the press type episode as an issue, a topic which has really consumed my psyche and that of the millions of other South Africans, the tomb raiders of sorts, the illegal miners, the Zama-Zamas, who, when that story broke of them effectively allegedly having gang raped women on abandoned mines around Krugersdorp, it shocked the nation and really began to zoom our attention in on this particular issue. And you know how I am on this show. I like surrounding myself, with guys who know exactly what they're talking about and who actually do the extra work of digging in on an issue. And tonight's panel, goodness me, is exactly that. You remember on the last episode of Liberty and Friends where we discussed this issue, we had Aron Hyman, of course, who is a journalist over at the Times group, that's TimeLIVE, an investigative journalist in that part of the world. Now, he is not alone this time. He's joined by his two colleagues. Now, instead of me waffling about it, how about I bring them onto the screen, introducing, of course, a fellow who is no stranger now to this channel, Aron Hyman, as mentioned. Aron, bro, good evening.
Good evening, Sihle. Thank you very much for having me again.
Very, very good to have you on. As I dismiss this little message on my screen. And good evening. As I did mention to the viewers, you do not come alone. Your colleagues who basically helped you put together this nebulous web, unpacking it, if you will, for us, the readers, are joining us tonight. Tankiso Makhetha, of course, is also joining us. Tankiso, Baba, good evening.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Very, very good, Baba, and very good to have you on the show. Of course, your first time on Liberty, or rather the Big Daddy Liberty show. Of course, completing this wonderful poiky pot from TimeLIVE, this three-legged poiky pot, pardon me, as I tongue twist myself, is Graeme Hosken, of course, another investigative journalist at the Times Group. Graeme, Baba, good evening.
How's it? How are you?
Very, very good, Baba, and very good to have you guys on the show. Guys, let's perhaps get straight into it. This issue, really, one, which I described at the beginning of the show as having captured the nation insofar as the horrific nature of it, the lugubrious almost bodies and rapes and almost the worst crime categories attached to these illegal gold miners, gold and other precious metals miners. But Tanki, so let me begin with you, because for as much as we, the ordinary public who maybe aren't fully attuned, are only recently becoming acclimatized to this issue, it's a relatively old one. And these gangs, these Zama gangs, as they've been called, they are a feature of our crime picture, aren't they?
Yes, they are. So these groups essentially started in Lesotho, and at the height of their wars or fights, between 2006 and 2010, there were about 100 plus people who were killed, who are Famo artists. And Famo is a music genre that's unique to Lesotho. So that's when these battles started. So they started around 2006, if not earlier, say between 2004 and 2006. So yeah, that's when they started.
I think you're right in exposing perhaps how these gangs, the genesis of them, these far more music genre gangs. And maybe to that effect, let me play a short clip for the listeners and the watchers of the show so that they actually get to hear what we're talking about when you speak about Famo. Now, my viewers can probably see my smirk already on the screen. Just prepare yourself, people. It is an acquired taste of music. All right, now again, even as I play this, thank you. So it's almost a sort of Lesotho folk music / verbal rapage type music in that part of the world. Very popular, of course, in Lesotho, and it's been brought into the country as being symbolic or representative of the various then groupings, the gangs in the Zama-Zama circles. However, thank you. So I laugh about it, but really, if you look at the guns they're carrying, these guys are very serious.
That they are. So Famo music originated around 1950s, 1960s. Was brought to South Africa by Lesotho migrant workers who worked the mines. And this is why Famo music and mining are intrinsically connected. So throughout the years, various Famo artists had beef with one another. I mean, you think about a legend, Apollo Ntabanyana, who died about 2 decades ago, if I'm not mistaken. He was one of the pioneers of Famo music. It was very big, like in townships around Soweto, your Mletsane, your Snawana, your Mapetla, your Naledi. He was a very big artist. So he also had disagreements with other Famo artists. And in the same vein as you would think of the East Coast, West Coast rap dilemma, similar, except it's happening right here, in our shores. And it evolved with time. And when I say it evolved, I mean post-democracy, a lot of mines started closing in South Africa. Now a huge number of mine workers were from Lesotho. They know where the gold is. They know how to traverse their way around, shafts and stuff. So they knew what they needed to do, and that's how they got into Zama-Zama mining. And so, but with time, some of these gangs start becoming violent. And also, one must understand that Famo is not necessarily just a music genre. It's also a lifestyle. It's embedded in Basotho culture. So it's not something like when we were in Lesotho with Graeme, one of the sources that we met there a couple of weeks ago told us that you are raised in this community where this artist is a big person in that community, and he's probably affiliated to a particular group of Famo gang. You are forced to join that gang. If you don't, you're considered mpimpi, someone who sells them out to rival groups as well. So you're forced to join these groups, and from there you move to the mines and you work as a Zama-Zama. So it's something that's, how can I put it? It's not easy to pull apart. It's heavily embedded within the culture of Basotho.
Maybe let's dig into this for a moment, because Tankiso, the image you're painting is an apt one insofar as it's a toxic, nebulous web that weaves in the culture, the music, the people, the regions, for example, the various gang, regional turfs, if you will, that they represent or born into, almost as the picture you're painting here. And part of that, of course, and I want to bring you in, Graeme, in a moment here, is because Tankiso mentioned it, the bringing in, of course, of the politics, the crime, the minerals, if you will, and the people. Let's focus in on the influence, therefore, of these particular gangs back in Lesotho, as I follow a particular thread of thought, a consciousness that Aron shared on his Twitter. I want to play a very quick video here. which maybe speaks to what I'm trying to introduce here, which is a clip of a politician in that part of the world, and I'll let you speak to me as to who this guy is, who features one of these Zama-Zamas doling out cash in what is presumably a election campaigning in that part of the world. Let me just play that clip, please. Again, Graeme, as we're watching this, it's almost the crass nature of it, isn't it? You know, the brazen, open nature of it, of a relationship clearly with the moneyed Zama-Zamas and the politics of Lesotho.
Absolutely. I mean, those two people right there are probably the most wanted men in South Africa at the moment. And they link to the Soweto Tavern massacre, in which 16 people were killed back in June. And earlier reports that Tankiso and I were working on pointed to a big turf war between two of these gangs, the Terene Makhetha and Terene Chakela. And these two gangs are deeply entrenched within Lesotho politics. I mean, they basically the source of votes for the two of the biggest parties in Lesotho, the ABC, which is the ruling party, and the DC, which is the main opposition party. And as you can see, they're doling out cash. I mean, while we weren't able to show that the cash came directly from illegal gold mining, I mean, the fact that these men are linked to crimes around Zama-Zama activities and murders is highly questionable. I mean, when we were in Lesotho, we were speaking to that country's police chief, who was saying, you know, it's neither these men nor the political parties can say where the source of the cash is, you know, the origins of the cash. The Lesotho political parties have said they've distanced themselves. They say, yeah, we don't accept cash directly, but we do use these gangs of hardened thugs to fund our social outreach programs, such as building schools, handing out food parcels, and lining the pockets of voters.
There's clearly a weird relationship, therefore, given that these are some of the most wanted men in South Africa. One has to ask the question, Graeme, how does the Lesotho government square this circle? How do they continue, for example, to openly, or rather allow, political parties vying for governance there to almost openly appear with these wanted men, considering Lesotho is part of SADC? I'm sure at some stage the SA government would have leaned in and said, hang on, we're after these guys, but you're appearing with them at political rallies. What's going on here?
I think it's too, it's a case of being too beneficial for political parties that side. I mean, a lot of the research that we've done shows that these gangs bring votes to the parties. I mean, you've got hundreds of thousands of people from Lesotho who are here in South Africa working in the mines. I mean, they vote. You know, each national from Lesotho that's working in South Africa is a potential vote for one or more of the parties. And it suits. It seems, from what we've been able to ascertain, it suits that government not to do anything about it, and potentially our government as well.
Again, this is a very shocking revelation here, and I want to come to you. Actually, before I do that, Tankiso, let me come to you, because I know you want to probably add to this particular point. Because for me, and Aron, I'll come to you in a moment. If I read the little caption that Aron had actually shared with us, insofar as breaking down who these people are and what they do, this figure keeps coming up. A1 Terene Kosi Mokata. You'll forgive me. I have a Zulu tongue, and these are Sotho names, so I will be corrected here. But Tankiso. But who is this Tereno guy? What's going on? Is it a guy or a group? Can you unpack this for us? What are we looking at here?
Okay, right. So Lesotho essentially has two parties that are the leading parties. They've got the All Basotho Convention, and they've got the Democratic Congress. So the video that you just showed us right now is an ABC rally, All Basotho Convention rally. So the formation of All Basotho Convention is primarily built on Famo followers. So in 2006, the former Prime Minister of Lesotho, Tom Thabane, who was then the police minister of Lesotho, started this political party. And at the time, while still being the police minister, he'd attend some of the funerals of some of these farmer artists who because they were gunning each other down, they were killing each other. So he'd attend the funerals and attempt to reconcile these gangs. But in the same breath, he also saw an opening in a sense that he saw the large number of followers that these gangs had. And he got into bed with Terene. So Terene Chakela was, he died, I think, last year because of COVID. He was the leader of Terene Chakela. Him and Tom Thabane had a conversation, and they agreed that, we will vote you into power. And in 2010, indeed, he was voted into power, and that's when he became the prime minister. So that's one faction of Terene, and that's how Terene Chakela and APC are in bed together. However, in about 3 or 4 years ago, Tom Thabane allegedly hired the members of Terene to murder his wife. Although charges against him have been withdrawn. So he hired members of Terene Chakela to murder his wife, and that hit was carried out. And they were all going to court and what have you not. But due to a lack of payment or somewhere along the chain, someone didn't pass on the money that they were supposed to pass on. Which ended up with one of his lieutenants being killed publicly in cold blood at a funeral in Gauteng. I think this was in 2019, if not 2020. And Terene Mokata was then formed. So the guy who was killed was Mokata Dirope, which means God of Thighs. He was killed at a funeral. And members of Terene Chakela who were affiliated to him decided that they don't want to be part of Terene Chakela anymore. So they moved and started their own Terene Mokat. And that's where this whole fracas is coming from. It's essentially rooted in the murder of Tom Thabane's wife. And that's how they differentiate themselves. They were the same regalia. They've been fighting for the name Terene. They're fighting for the name Terene as well. So members from both factions defect to the opposite faction at any given moment. And as Graeme mentioned earlier on, that what actually got us into the story was the murder of the 16 people at the tavern in Soweto. So one of the members from Terene Chakela had defected to Terene Mokat, and to prove his loyalty, he needed to prove his loyalty by giving away some of the locations of the members from his group. So first they killed a guy about 2 or 3 hours before they went to the tavern. When they got to the tavern, they identified another guy that was affiliated to Terene Chakela, and that's when. But they weren't sure if everyone in the tavern was a member from Terene Chakela, so they just shot everyone. And that got into the story. That's when we discovered all of this. So, yeah.
Wow. Even as I listen to this, it becomes abundantly clear that the problem it's massive. Wow, sorry, I'm even tongue twisted. Wow, people lost their lives over a petty gang war. Like that one. That's insane. That is an insane revelation to hear. Aron, let me come to you because I want to show people what we're talking about here insofar as these are not cheap, almost, pardon my using this expression, but 2-cent gangsters here. These guys are making serious money as they illegally mine these And if the SAPS data is anything to go by, there's over 600 abandoned mine shafts across, the mining sector region, rather, let me put it that way, in this country. So a lot of these guys obviously have that intimate knowledge of these shafts and are mining it and are making money. I want to play that clip, Aron, of in your thread, pardon me, where, and it's funny to me, and I'll let you speak to this too. These guys are obviously also media savvy in a sense, or social media savvy, because they often show themselves, producing the stuff and almost boast about it, both in terms of the upstream that is bringing the stuff up, and also the proceeds. These wads of notes that they often, I think they call it bread. Anyway, instead of me waffling about it, let me show the viewers exactly what I'm talking about. Wow, must be nice to sort of flash that kind of money. I think a lot of my viewers saw their car payments and indeed even bond payments in that stack that he's holding. And I just want to correct myself here. Data from the AG, the Auditor General, as Tankiso was pointing out, actually indicates there's over 6,000 ownerless shafts in the country. So clearly, the fertile ground, Aron, for these individuals to exploit and to make a lot of money.
Yeah. Sihle, it's I think there's a bit of a misconception. There has been for some time a bit of a misconception in the minds of South Africans as to what Zama-Zama activity really is. It's not just panning at a mine dump, on the used ore, getting the offcuts of the commercial mining activity. It's really these guys have infiltrated deep underground in commercial mines. So you hear from a lot of commercial mines speaking of their staff smuggling down members of these groups into the working mines. And when we were busy researching the story and speaking, I spoke with a mining captain, former Sibanye-Stillwater mining captain, who explained that in the Cook shaft, or the Cook mine, which is one of their 5 mining operations in South Africa. Now, this is a mining giant. We're talking about one of the 2 or 3 biggest gold mining companies in South Africa. And they had hundreds of Zama-Zamas smuggled down, to the point where when they had a strike, I think it was around 2016 or 2017, all the miners had to come up, and obviously the Zama-Zamas stayed down there. And the workers were constantly smuggling them down food and water and also equipment that they needed to survive. So when the strike happened, nobody was taking down any food or water for them. So the Zama-Zama started coming up one by one. And the mine soon realized that they had hundreds of Zama-Zamas down there. It reached a point where, and they are, so these Zama-Zamas are getting information from they're getting information from the lab analysts, who are telling them that this ore sample from this reef that you're in now is yielding high gold results. So go and mine there. And the Zama-Zamas will go there in a working mine, blast. They're well armed. So if other mining staff or mining security run into them in the wrong tunnel, they could be in mortal danger, and it's happened before. And that was these were in the starting days. This was in 2016, 2017. The Zama-Zama problem became so bad that Sibanye-Stillwater decided to place Cook, one of their 5 mining operations, the Cook mining operation just southwest of Soweto, under care and maintenance at a cost of 500 million rand a year. It's cost them approximately 3 billion rand so far. They can't close the mine because firstly there's Zama-Zamas like a kilometer or 2 underground, and then secondly there is a protest, not a protest, but a sort of petition from the nearby Goldfields South Deep mine, that they don't want Sibanye-Stillwater to close the Cook mine because then they're going to have water ingress into their mine. But I also think they're afraid that the Zama-Zama problem might spill over to them. So the point is that these guys are mining in the same veins where Sibanye-Stillwater and your major mining operations are mining, and they're getting high gold yields, as you could see from that one video. And it's gotten to the point where the security and police are getting into armed clashes. You've seen how armed these guys are, where they outgunned. We had an official response from Sibanye-Stillwater saying an explosive device was launched at one of their security teams who went to do a raid essentially underground to try and get the Zama-Zamas out of one of their mining shafts. They've had security teams going down, getting ambushed along the way. They only find their bodies days later. They've had several security guards killed. And these guys are packing heavy weaponry. As you can see, these firearms seem to come from the stocks of the Lesotho military.
You know, Aron, even as you're talking, I was flighting those images on the screen of just how well armed these individuals are. And they're not using, you know, what would one assume, right, is the old stock maybe from that were in arms caches in places like Mozambique, for example, smuggled in. No, a lot of these weapons are brand new, the kind of stuff I, as a gun nut, would love to have. And I just want to show my viewers what you're talking about when you say the shootouts are brazen. They're not, you know, in some corner relegated to some, you know, they're brazen and they involve the state or them, these Zama-Zamas taking the state on directly. Just have a look at this.
He's from our side. He's from our side, the person who's shooting.
Yes. He's cock.
So, Aron, you can see here that these guys are packing heavy guns, weaponry, and they are taking the state on directly. 2 police officers there, as you mentioned off air, cowering away from the gunfire even.
Yeah, so that was at Cook Mine. I think it was in June or July this year. That was southwest of Soweto. Now, Sibanye-Stillwater told us that they believe this was the first attempt that they know of Zama-Zamas officially trying to take over a mine shaft, a deep level mining operation, essentially. So they about 100 gunmen went and started firing and started sabotaging basically the substation at one of, I think it was Cook Mine's shaft number 4. The electricians and mining technicians arrived. They came under fire and hid in the substation. One of the foreman electrician was shot dead on the scene. The firefighters arrived and the police arrived and mine security arrived. The mine security got into a gunfight with the 100 assailants. And as you can see in the video, the firefighters are hiding with the police from the gunfire.
I mean, it's gotten to stupefying levels. And even as you were talking, Aron, we were playing video clips of, again, showing how these guys are not hiding. I mean, brazenly entering these mines, parading with their rifles, the sort of grainy black and white, or rather night vision imagery about showing these guys, almost as Aron was mentioning, taking over these operations. Guys, we're in the last, if you'll indulge me, let's call it the last 8, maybe 10 minutes of our chat, because obviously this is cooking over our time here. But Graeme, wow, I'm even struggling to form the question. Graeme, the costs to the economy, to watch, obviously, legal miners who pay taxes, contribute to the overall social welfare of this country by being contributors to the tax base, being muscled out by guys who are just a criminal syndicate.
No, absolutely. I mean, the economy is losing billions and billions of rands. I mean, I think they estimate, so the Chamber of Mines estimates, or the Mineral Council, sorry, estimates about illegal mining across the economy about 10 billion a year, and that's probably a very, very conservative number. But I mean, you're not only talking about the financial loss, you're talking about deaths, murders, rapes, livelihoods being destroyed. As Aron was pointing out, when a mine shaft shuts down, people get retrenched. People lose their jobs, people go hungry, bills can't be paid, and people are forced into, essentially turn to criminal activity if they can't find any other employment. And it just beggars belief as to how the situation has got to what it is. The police and the South African government can't seem to get a handle on it. I mean, from those videos, you can see the police completely outgunned. I mean, when we were, myself and Tankiso were in Klerksdorp, but looking at one of the angles to the story, I mean, police were telling us there that we were speaking to, that the units have seemingly deliberately been whittled down to a handful of officers, from, I think there were about 120 strong to now 16. I mean, it just, you've got to ask yourself, what on earth is government actually doing from a law and order and economics perspective to address this? And it doesn't seem like much.
And thank you. So let me bring you in, because recently on my daily morning analysis show, Ivuga Nazo, I covered the deputy president, David Mabuza, in Parliament, boasting, in an almost jovial, we've won type tone, that, quote, they've arrested over 4,600 illegal miners in the countries, effectively suggesting that they're on top of this issue. I look at these images, I hear you guys talk, and I know that one of the two of you are lying, and I don't think it's you guys.
There are about over 100,000 Zama-Zamas in this country, and that's probably me being kind in terms of the number. These guys are operating in abandoned mine shafts that are not being policed. You look at Klerksdorp, it has about between 26 to 29 abandoned shafts. Each shaft, according to the information that we have, can produce anything between 20 to 40 million rands worth of gold ore every 2 weeks. So, no, I don't think government is on top of this. If anything, police are not trained to tackle this sort of issue. Probably, I would say they need a specialized unit, but not even a specialized unit would be able to contend with this sort of madness.
Guys, as we conclude, and I'm going to do just one more round here, because I'm tempted to ask of you guys, what do we do? How do we tackle this? But in all fairness to you guys, you're just the news hounds. You're giving us this news, you're showing us the reality of this, and there are people who are paid megabucks in this country to do exactly this, to figure out what to do. How do we address this, both as a law enforcement issue, and secondly, from a policy perspective, to maybe open up the sector? If you can't necessarily fight these individuals who are doing this, then how do you formalize it in a sense and make it safer? There's a lot therefore to unpack in that regard, and not for this conversation. But let me do one more round here. Aron, I'm going to come to you. I think there's something to be said here about the quality of the investigative journalism you guys have done, and kudos to you. And I know the comment section is going to go live, even as I say this, to say, well done, guys. But I want us to put this into perspective beyond this conversation. We're talking about people's lives here, Aron. There are people who are affected by this. There are fellow South Africans like you and me who are living this reality of having to live amongst these violent criminal gangs doing this, the effects, Aron, on people's lives across the country? What have you guys seen?
In the mining towns, so you're talking about your entire West Rand district of Gauteng, you're talking about the Welkom area in Free State, we're talking about northern KZN and Mpumalanga, Limpopo. People are incredibly desperate. They're desperate in terms of being affected by this level of criminality. The Krugersdorp rapes is a perfect example of what the people are dealing with. And the thing is, you can't tell South Africans go and work in the mines alongside these Zama-Zamas. It's as Tankiso wrote in the Sunday Times this weekend, and I would suggest that people go and read it. The 10 bodies that were found next to the highway last week, a direct result of a different Zama-Zama gang, also Basotho Zama-Zama gang, being pushed out of one area as a result of rapes. And you've got these knock-on effects. Working in mining shafts is not safe. That's why you have commercial operations where there's methane underground, there's all sorts of gases, water needs to be constantly pumped out. It's an incredibly expensive operation. And you already have Anglo Gold Ashanti, which is a company registered in South Africa that's pulled out of gold mining in South Africa. BHP Billiton has pulled out of gold mining in South Africa. They're still operating in other African countries, extracting gold there. But we've essentially, mining towns, we've relinquished our gold mining rights to criminal syndicates, and just to finally, illustrate what we're talking about in terms of economic impact and how it's really affecting the lives of ordinary South Africans. During the COVID-19 pandemic and shutdown, the South African economy was buoyed by an increase and a higher than average increase in commodity prices. That kept our economy floating just out of depression levels of degradation. So it's a foundation, a bedrock of the South African economy. Yes, maybe we can change that, but we can't change it now.
And even as I hear this, Graeme, let me come to you, because there's a conversation to be had here about, man, I'm just sort of taken aback by the story. And I'll tell you why, Graeme, and I want you to speak to this. For me, I want to rehash this point and just emphasize it. We're talking about fellow South Africans here who are on the receiving end of this criminality, who are doing the dying, who are being raped, who are living in fear because the gunshots are a permanent feature now in their neighborhoods. South Africans who can't even recognize the communities they grew up in. Why? Because they're being taken over by these, and I'm not trying to play the xenophobic note here, but mostly, these foreign nationals, likely here illegally, committing these crimes and almost disappearing in the wind. And again, this is not to say there aren't South Africans who are doing this. I'm very much sure there are. But the overall picture here, Graeme, is a complete breakdown of the rule of law, and the economy will suffer from this.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no law on the mining belt. I mean, if you look at wherever it is, I mean, be it coal mining, chrome mining, gold mining, which was our article's focus. I mean, it's a complete banditry. I mean, there's nothing else. It's a bunch of thugs ruling the roost by the end of a gun, making billions of rands off our country and our country's resources, and people are suffering. I mean, people are dying on a almost daily basis. And you asked earlier, what can be done to resolve it? Well, I mean, government should have taken action 2006. You have the mining minister saying, "Oh, well, we're going to launch a task team." I mean, how many times are we hearing about let's launch a task team, and then we're going to launch another task team about a task team about a meeting about a meeting? I mean, it just goes on ad infinitum. And it's more than a law and order thing to resolve. Yes, you need law and order, but I mean, you need government to actually stand up and say, right, we're dealing with this properly, be it legalizing artisanal mining, which is very different to what we're seeing here, which is deep underground shaft mining, and creating opportunities where people are not forced into illegal mining, where mining companies are not forced to close down shafts and operations. And I mean, in the end, everybody is suffering because of what's happening, and government just doesn't seem to get it.
Sadly, indeed, that seems to be the case. And thank you. So, as I come to you, Puti, for your last say and your last gasp on this issue, I wanted to actually cite that particular piece that Aron touched on, of how applying pressure on the one side may basically rather move the issue to another part of the world, highlighting, if you will, Tankiso, how these gangs have almost established turfs and are willing to bitterly fight for these turfs to the death. Insofar as this case, 10 bodies, if not 11, if I'm not mistaken, but 10 bodies found mutilated in and amongst South African suburbia, in a sense. Is this an intractable problem, Tanki? So should we expect bloodshed going forward? Is this going to be what South Africa is now?
Yeah, I mean, I was telling the boys on Friday that, it doesn't seem like the bloodshed is going to end, because when I did the story, I interviewed members from Terene who were the victims in this instance, accusing Siahi members, another Basotho group, of carrying out these attacks. So they were displaced in Krugersdorp, where there's a heavy police presence at the moment because of the gang rapes. Now they're not able to make any money. They're not able to mine any gold. So they try to take over a turf that belongs to Terene. But also, for a number of years, turfs between these Basotho groups have been distinguished, especially along the Gold Reef. So you find Terene operates between the east and the west end in Gauteng. Terene Makhetha operates mainly in Klerksdorp. Siahi operates in between some of these spaces as well. But now they're being displaced. We're talking about over 1,000, 2,000 of these gang members. So the bloodshed is not going to end. We need probably DMRE to enforce legislation of rehabilitating these mines, in order for illegal mining to come to an end.
Fellas, I'm gonna have us wrap up here. I can see we've also lost Graeme Chen. That's just a function of the network. That, of course, is Graeme Hosken, also an investigative, journalist at the Times Group. Make sure, please, you read and consume the content, and you subscribe, of course, to that news group. You guys want to do that. I bring you their content on Vuganazo every morning anyway, so might as well go straight to the source. Thank you. So, as a final gasp, how do the folks find you on social media if you do want to be found?
They can't find me. I don't have any social
media
accounts. They will not find me.
Well, in that case, let me call it over there. And Aron, I always give you the same opportunity. If you do want to be found on social media, what are your social media tags? Oh, I'm mute you there. Sorry, Aron.
Sorry, you can only find me on Twitter, where I'm Aron Hyman, or at Aron_Hyman. That's Aron with an A, not two A's.
Excellent. Guys, a big thank you to you. And here at the BDL show, we'll stay in touch with you guys. Maybe even we can bring some cameras along if the guys are willing to be interviewed in order to bring this to life. I mean, you guys have shared here a whole industry, in a sense, an illicit industry that is making people millionaires and billionaires and leaving bodies in its wake. So we might even cover it here on the show, with a major thanks to you fellas, of course. That is Tankiso Makhetha from the Times Group, and of course Aron, his colleague, all three of them actually, investigative journalists at the Times Group. Guys, what do you think about the story? Goodness me, it's an eye-opener, isn't it? This is happening in and amongst us in everyday South Africa. I mean, I know some of you who live in these parts of the world, and I know the comment section is going to go wild with you guys saying, yes, finally, someone is talking about this. I think we need to talk about it because, as I said, this is happening to fellow South Africans. These illegal miners who are often romanticized, sadly, by some. When notions about mining should go to the people and all of that, or the people right now who are doing this mining are these guys, these violent criminal gangs. And I think these fellas are right to point out that this has to be legalized in some way in order to reduce the violence and actually flush out and push out the gangsters. But anyway, don't take it from me. I'll be reading your comments. Make sure you hit that like button, please. Share the stream. And if you want to get in touch with us here at the Big Daddy Liberty Show, super simple. We have a website, www.bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge a bit of a contribution to the show. Guys, scroll to the bottom and you can contribute to the show. It helps us put this content out. With that being said, thanks for watching. And remember, as I always say at the end of every show, never trust a commie.